welcome everybody to Real Talk. Today I am with Kristen Smith, the world famous Kristen
World
Smith.
famous
Yes,
for
in my world,
what?
you are extremely famous. And we are going to be talking about Anatomy of a Fall. Um, Kristen, you sent me a message about 3 weeks ago. It was less than a month, but it was more than 2 weeks. Like, it was a little while ago. You said, hey, going to Chicago Film Festival, here's the list of all the movies I want to see and want to talk about. Just let me know when you're talking about them. And then, like, randomly on Friday, I was like, hey, number one on your list is Anatomy of the Fall. It is being released this weekend. Can you come on? And you were kind enough to say yes.
Yes.
So
Yes, I want to.
thank you so much. I am so excited to talk to you about this movie. This year's Palme d'Or Palme d'Or winner out of the Cannes Film Festival. And just I feel like a way to give this movie a little context is to actually talk about the Palme d'Or and the Cannes Film Festival, and sort of like a brief, not super brief, but also let's not go on for, like, you and I could probably go on for about 45 minutes.
Probably.
We were literally going on for this about 5 minutes before, and it felt like we hadn't even scratched the surface. So, but if we could, like, let's get it to like 5 to 10 minutes on, you start and just talk about the Palme d'Or and the Cannes Film Festival and what it kind of means to you, and how what you think it means culturally from a film cultural standpoint.
Well, I know the Cannes Film Festival, which happens in France every single year, usually happens around springtime.
Right. The ringy ding ding time.
Yeah, and that's where I feel like it's largely international. Like,
Right.
compared to Oscars, it's largely
For
international.
sure.
So like you'll have a jury that's usually made up of a filmmaker who won, or a actually
Important.
I
Yeah.
actually think, yeah, and I think it actually sometimes often is like the filmmaker who won the previous year. Like, I know Julia Ducournau did it and gave it the Triangle of Sadness, and I think they gave Anatomy of a Fall was Ruben Östlund.
Interesting. Okay. And because, like, Spike Lee was the year that it was in 2021, but in 2020 there was no festival. So I wonder if that's like a common thing, or if it's just happened out that the last 2 years.
I
But
honestly have no idea,
but,
but I did notice it
this
the
is the
past 2 years.
minutia. This is the minutia that we don't need to dive into.
Yeah, but like
So
for me,
yeah.
not only is it for a lot of major international films, like
Right.
the first place where we get to see them,
Right.
I think Palme d'Or winners are fascinating.
Yeah.
And often, because they come from all kinds of different countries, like you get everything from Parasite one year to Titan from France.
Yep.
And if you go back further, like we were discussing beforehand, like you can get, one year was a tie between Farewell My Concubine and The Piano.
Right.
And then the next year is Pulp Fiction. Like,
Right.
there are times where like you'll have a really random movie like Uncle Boonmee, who can
Yeah.
recall his past lives, or I, Daniel Blake. And then you'll just get a fucking banger like Anatomy of a Fall, or
Right.
like
Right.
or like Parasite.
Parasite and Triangle of Sadness, just three movies that really kind of made an impact that year. And I want to, and one of the things we were talking about is the last four winners, even Titan, that was, in the film geek community, like, that was a really impactful film. Like, we even had an episode where we discussed it, and I talked about, like, it didn't necessarily work for me, but you really enjoyed it. And
Yeah, I was there for it, and I was
yeah,
like, we're talking Titan, I am so here for it.
right. But it's even though it didn't work for me, it's like I could absolutely have a conversation about this film and talk about what doesn't work for me, and why the things that I get about it, and why it didn't necessarily work for me, and things like that. And you go back to the early 2000s, and there was another run like this we were talking about, where 4 out of 5 years. It was 2000. There was Dancer in the Dark, Lars von Trier, who I have covered extensively on this show. The next movie was The Sun's Room, which I don't know too much about, so I'm going to pass.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, but then it was The Pianist, uh, from Roman Polanski. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think that well, Brody won for Best Actor. I don't think.
Yeah, it won director, actor, and
I don't think it won.
adapted screenplay.
That's right. It did not win picture. And then
Chicago won that year.
Right, right. And then Elephant from Gus Van Sant, which that movie is just nearly impossible to watch, but really important and amazing. And then Fahrenheit 9/11 from Michael Moore. And it's like that's the last time I can remember a run like this where it's just like, because from then you get Le Font, which I've heard of, but I haven't really seen. Then The Wind That Shakes the Barley, which you mentioned, which I honestly I've never heard of. The 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days. Again, I've never heard of.
Great movie from Romania.
There you go.
And actually was the movie that forced the Academy to change its rules about the international feature.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because they used to, oh man, I'm going to probably butcher this, but like the whole backstory was it was harder. It was difficult for you to get sometimes challenging films nominated in international feature. And you did not. That's right. You didn't have to watch all the films in order to vote.
Interesting. Okay.
So like people 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days, which is a brilliant film. A lot of people thought that it was going to be, oh yeah, this is totally going to like win best foreign film. And then it didn't even get shortlisted. And people were like, what the fuck?
Oh, because people hadn't seen it. And so they changed the rules saying, no, you actually have to see it.
Yeah, like you actually have to watch the films in order to be able to vote for them.
Yeah. So the point I'm trying to make is the interesting thing about the Palme d'Or winner is we see these runs like, in the 80s and 90s, it was a lot of big movie, small movie, big movie, small movie. And then you had this run in the early 2000s where it was like big movie, big movie, big movie. And then there was just a really long stretch of movies that just, for whatever reason, just never had the international impact, or certainly reached an impact here in the States. But now we're in another era where it's really impactful. And do you see that continuing, or do you think that they're going to go back to sort of like, what, let's dial this back and because I'll tell you right now, Anatomy of the Fall, I loved it. Okay. I loved it. And I hope to see it get nominated for Oscars. And I feel like this has the potential to be a big movie, but it also could flip the other way where it just like, it's a tough watch,
Yeah, because I think it does have a chance to get nominated. I mean, we're kind of jumping back and forth, but sure. I know Anatomy of a Fall has been one of those movies that's been heavily talked about. So kind of like with Anatomy of a Fall, with movies like Zone of Interest, it's been on a lot of film people's radars since it premiered back in, what was it, like April or May?
Yeah.
So like it's heavily sought after. My screening, which I saw at the Chicago International Film Festival, was sold out. I had to be in the front seats looking up at this like large screen, and the entire time I'm like, this movie's fucking rules. I don't even care that my neck hurts the entire time. I'm just so invested in this movie.
Yeah.
And so like I kind of do hope. I do hope that like, because the Academy is more international, like they keep adding more international people, more international actors, like craftspeople, that like it'll keep shoving the spotlight on these exemplary like non-English films.
A movie that we had you on earlier in the year to talk about was Past Lives.
Yes.
And I feel, and that, I mean, look, we had that discussion then. It's an amazing movie. Where do you see I think they're comparable in in sort of their accessibility, I think. where do you see one versus the other, where one is obviously a Palme d'Or winner and the other one was just a super early release that, sort of had a low rumble for a very long time? How would you compare those two as far as the impact they have film culturally, and then as we approach award season?
It's kind of hard. Past Lives is kind of in a weird position where it came out very early. Like, for a while, we had nothing, so we were just like, well, I guess Past Lives is the best thing that we've seen in the first half of this year. Like,
For sure.
it's gonna be it's gonna probably run itself into the After Sun. Like, the way
Mhm.
After Sun was, if there was any breakthrough director, it was going to be, um oh, what was her name? Charlotte Wells, the director of After Sun.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure that, like, Past Lives is gonna be like this. Like, Celine's Song is gonna get is gonna get the first time DGA award. Like,
Right.
it's gonna get all of those. A lot of people still kind of have it near the top when it comes to oh goodness, brain fart. Like, when it comes to, like, original screenplay,
Okay. Yeah.
but Anatomy of a Fall is still simmering. It's
Right.
still, like, being released. It just came
Right.
out today. So, like, it's been hopping different festivals. Like, it
Mhm.
played, I think, like a Toronto, may have played it at, like, Venice.
Yep.
And so, like, it's just now getting to an open audience around the time that, like, people are starting to think about awards.
Right.
And so, like, it works better in its favor to have a film that came out later to get more
Sure.
nominations than it would, like, probably an
Flip
outlier of that would be, like, Everything Everywhere, which did
I was
come
just gonna
out,
say.
like,
Yes.
January or February,
Right.
and follows really small list of recent winners that have come
Mhm.
out earlier in the year.
Right.
So you have to kind of, like, you have to keep reminding to people, be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, remember all the magic we had when we saw Past Lives, and we were
Right,
so
right,
happy, and we were,
right,
like, so, like, heartbroken because of it." Like, you have to, like, remind people instead of it being like, "This is the movie that's happening right now."
right, right. Now, so let's move to the conversation about Anatomy of the Fall now.
Okay.
From that standpoint, let's kick it off from there. Tell me, first of all, let's try to keep spoilers low, just because this isn't something
Yes.
that has super wide release yet. Like I mentioned, like, so on Tuesday or Wednesday, I checked Film Times to see what was coming out this past weekend. I was really hoping not to have to do Five Nights in Freddy's for this show.
Oh, I
And
saved you from it?
I was like, oh, there's nothing coming out. And then I was like, let me just look for show times for Five Nights at Freddy's. And I was like, but you know what? I'm going to just check one more time to see if there's anything interesting coming out in the art cinema nearby. And so they didn't have anything interesting coming out on Tuesday or Wednesday. But then on Friday, I checked the times again, and it was like, oh my god, Anatomy of the Fall, yes. And then I called you. I was like, can you please do the show? And you were like, yes. And I was like, yay. So here we are. So that, I think that's the kind of, like, I don't feel like there's a lot of, like, hoopla about this, but I also think that because it's the Palme d'Or winner, I think it's going to, get an opportunity throughout the country. So I want people to get the opportunity to see it, but without spoiling it. With that in mind, let's sort of talk big picture from the standpoint of what really worked for you. So our conversation that we had for Past Lives, for example, the script stood out. Like, it was so much about the script. For Anatomy of the Fall, I'll just tell you, for me, the script was good, but I felt that the lead performance was really,
100%.
I mean, if you get anybody that can't carry 2.5 hours of just absolutely being raked over the coals, that this doesn't work. And so go on, carry that.
Carry that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, like, I think she gives the best performance I've seen all year.
Yeah.
And something that I do wanna comment on that I think is really interesting, um, is how this movie, the direction by Justine Triet,
Mhm.
like she mixes documentary style with like a more formalist style that we would kind of expect from like a Palme d'Or winner.
Yeah.
And like there are times where you're in the courtroom and like all of a sudden the camera is just like shakily trying to go to like what's the action that's just now happening, as if you're watching a documentary and the cameraman was just like, oh shit, something's happening, I should probably shift my camera over here, to times where like it then is told from the perspective of like the video that the prosecutors are taking,
Mhm.
and then times where like it's very much a movie on tripods
Right.
being like like telling us a story, and like having Sandra Hüller be able to like embody this person and be able to like walk this very thin line that Anatomy of a Fall is trying to like cross,
Yeah.
and slowly doling out information. Like the more information that you learn about her, both like repulses you as well
Mhm.
as like,
It
I wouldn't say
I
repulses,
get
but
it.
like
No.
it makes you so conflicted because
Yeah.
it's also she is so dynamic and so charismatic,
Right.
and like
And you feel both at the for me, you feel both at the same time. She's being persecuted almost for her dynamic personality and her just her multifacetedness, while also complicating her own existence just by also never really being completely readable.
yes.
Just never being completely, not that she's never honest. You never get to see, that's the important thing with this movie is, and I think important for the character is, you never get the sense that she's lying, but you also never get the sense that you have any idea who she is.
Yeah, like to me, one of the great joys in watching this movie for me was that you'll have oh goodness, I had a point and I forgot it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I killed it.
No, that's okay. I was thinking about like
Well,
how there's a in a movie like this
mhm.
where like the central premise of it is, did she do this?
Right.
Like,
By the
and that's
way,
not a spoiler.
yeah,
That's like the conceit of the entire movie.
and the movie starts with a website. Did she do it? Literally, the movie starts. There's a website. Did she do it? That so that it puts it in the back of your head, so that at the end you can go to the website and vote. Did she do it? Yes or no? And you just vote yes or no. And so yeah, not a spoiler. Good, continue.
Yeah, and so to have a character who is both, she's very intelligent
Mhm.
and she's very well-meaning, that to in a lesser hands or a lesser written movie or
Yeah.
a less efficient direction or like a poor actor,
Yeah.
like when when she makes missteps, you're just like, I understand why you're doing this, but please stop doing this. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a movie that like so much of the tension is just, I am so conflicted with all the information that I am both getting, also knowing what how from a audience standpoint, like, oh, this looks bad the
Mhm.
way she is saying this, but I understand why she's saying it.
Right.
And like having to go through an entire movie where you're hyper analyzing every single action and every single thing that ever took place within their relationship,
Yeah.
especially in the worst moments of a relationship,
Right.
is just like the way I described it, this is the way I've been selling it to people. I'm like, like this movie is a slow burn. I'm usually very shaky. Like I have medication that makes me like very like restless, like
Mhm.
constantly like tapping toes, like I'm kind of constantly moving.
Okay.
And I noticed like two-thirds into this movie, I was like, holy shit, I am sitting perfectly still. I am not moving. I
Yeah.
have no desire to move because I'm so invested trying
Mhm.
to piece together like what could possibly have happened, like what's happening, like where
Right.
does this fit in, where
Right.
is the story going, because I
Right.
don't know. And like
Right.
that's the beauty of this. It's
Yeah.
so beautiful the way it's able to thread that needle for 2.5 hours.
And let me just say, one of the I think the reason why this wins Palme d'Or, and I think the reason why this has a chance to really do well come Oscar time is, even though the subject matter that it deals with is it's so depressing and it's so heavy and it's so difficult to process, but at the same time, at the heart of it, it's a courtroom drama. Like, that's what it is. It's a courtroom drama. Is the drama, uh, a little more difficult to swallow than, say, A Few Good Men's, a private happened to be killed, and so these two other grunts are put up for it. Yeah, it's way more difficult to process than that. It's way more difficult. But at the end of the story, at the end of the day, it's you still have McAfee going up against Kevin Bacon and presenting what they have to the court. And that's really good cinema usually. Like it's really difficult to make a bad courtroom drama. Like you have to go out of your way to screw courtroom dramas up. Like literally. And here's another thing I'll say. The past 2 years, because was Saint Omer was last year, right?
Yeah, St. Omar
The,
was last year.
I'll say the two biggest films coming out of France the last 2 years are both courtroom dramas. So yeah, that works. It just works. And the drama of this, the reality is that the courtroom drama plays as such a wonderful it's such a wonderful counterbalance to the marital drama that's going on. And it's the way that Triet layers those two, it's astounding. I mean, you don't even realize that you're doing it until that you're going through that judgment in your head on two layers until almost the very end, where that final tape is played out and you're like, holy shit, that's what this has
Yeah,
been.
and they
This
play
That's what
that
this has been the whole time.
and they play a tape, like,
Yeah.
they're teasing a tape throughout it. Like, I don't think that's
Right.
much of a spoiler. They're just
I don't consider that a
they
spoiler
tease
at
it,
all.
like, in the first 20 minutes, but
Yeah.
they're like, "We're discussing this tape," and then instead of just listening to the tape, like, you
You get
watch
to
it in
watch it.
real
You
time.
get to watch it. Yeah.
And,
And
like, her being able to jump back and forth between this, and, like, I even almost forgot that we were in a courtroom because we were just, like, so invested in, like, this
yeah.
one moment in
Yeah.
time that is
Yeah.
gonna be hyper analyzed by these
Mhm.
prosecutors, and you're
Mhm.
just like, "This is so stressful."
And ultimately, I I I feel like that's where maybe 80% of people make their judgment.
I think
I
so.
don't know. I don't know, but I knew upon hearing that, I knew exactly, like, in the first 5 minutes of that, I was like, oh, I know exactly which way I'm going, yes or no. And it was just like, this is so blatantly what's going on. And yet by the end of it, you're like, oh, I see why there's some doubt. Like, I don't agree with it. And I feel like it's absolutely 100% classic, you know, blaming somebody where really there is no blame. And they're just the human need to kind of say this is who's at fault and why, rather than just accept that life's fucking difficult, and sometimes you just have to accept that this terrible thing happened and nobody's to blame. And so that's kind of, when did you like, at what point did you finally say, okay, this is where I'm where I'm landing, whether it be yes or no?
I don't wanna say because I don't wanna sway people's opinions
Sure.
other than
Was it earlier or later than the tape presentation?
earlier.
Okay, cool. All right.
Like,
I knew where I was leaning. Like I was leaning that way heavily. Like I
but
was
there's still
leaning
like,
the way I was
but
the way I was
even
leaning
like,
heavily.
even in saying that, like, even in saying, like I mentioned earlier, like even in saying my mind felt pretty made up
Mhm.
earlier,
Yes.
the fact that like you're having to watch, you're having to see where the court is trying to take this, and having to couple that with the actions, couple that with what defense she has available to herself
Right,
in
right,
order
right.
to try and prove her innocence.
Right, right.
And then the overwhelming unknowns, like on top of, we haven't even talked about her kid, who is
I wanted to that's a
who
whole
is so
conversation.
good.
That's
Like,
a whole conversation. That was my next topic, but I definitely want like I definitely want you to finish this thought if you can without.
yeah, it's just like I felt so tense, even though I had in my mind what I felt like happened.
Yeah.
Just in the intense unknowns of everything. Like, the ultimate unknowable is that we only have an aftermath. Like, we
Mhm.
don't actually we like we're only dealing, and I don't think that's a spoiler either. Like, we're only dealing with the aftermath
Right.
of this action, of like
Right.
what's happened.
Right.
And we will never know. And we have to like go off of our instinct, go off of facts, what little facts that we have,
Mhm.
and being able to see how those facts can be twisted for
Yeah.
either argument.
Yeah.
And
It's funny that at one point during the trial, maybe it's more than one point, a couple points during the trial, the sort of the judge says we're just seeking to get to the truth. And it's like that's not what they're trying to do at all. And it's just like that's not what they're trying. They're just trying to get to where they feel comfortable with how they think things happened, which the truth is, and even the lawyer says very early in the movie, actually it's in the trailer, the truth doesn't really matter here. It's like, what you did or didn't do doesn't really matter here. It's
it's like
more,
what you can prove.
yeah, or,
And it's shocking to think how much that the burden of proof, and I don't know anything about France's legal system,
I know a
how
lot
that
more now
works.
because I've seen two
A lot
movies.
more.
I've seen
That's
two
all
movies
that's
on
all
it.
I have to go off of is those
And
two movies.
we're good. That's going to be the final conversation. Like that, I have layers in what I want to talk about, but let's talk about the kid because the kid's
Yes.
super duper really important, as you can imagine. A kid is in both a marriage and in a trial that could potentially send his mom to jail. Um, the kid, just hit me. Feelings. Where are you with the kid?
I mean, I thought he was fantastic.
As an actor,
As an
yes.
actor, I was
As a
blown
kid,
away. As a
as a character,
child,
as a character.
as
I
a
want to talk about the
character,
character. Yeah, let's just
he's a
get it out of the way.
child.
The kid was fucking amazing. This kid
He was
actor
so good.
is possibly the best child actor I've seen in,
In a
uh
long time.
since like Sixth Sense. Haley Joel Osment in Sixth
I
Sense.
mean, at least since, oh goodness, who was Elsie Fisher from 8th grade? Did you ever see
Okay.
8th grade?
Yeah, no, that was a really good one. But I think he's better than that. Like I think like honestly, I think he's better than that.
Yeah, I would probably say so.
Yeah. Anyway, fantastic. Like instantly in the conversation for top 25 kid performances, since 1980, whatever you want to say. So but the character though, because the character is really important and very difficult in my mind.
Yeah, very difficult because, I mean, it's tough. He has to be a witness
Yeah.
for his mother and also against his mother.
And and
That,
and let's hey, because we're this again, we've mentioned the layers. Let's add the layer on here. He's vision impaired.
yes,
I,
which I didn't
that
make the connection that was symbolic, but yeah, you're right.
ob-
He is kind of
blatantly
blind.
blatantly obviously symbolic. Like you could not. there he might as well have been walking around with a hammer saying, I am visually impaired, and I am a witness. It's like, whoa, hold on now. Okay. So I, but he also does a thing towards, like, again, I don't think this is going to be a super big spoiler. If you feel differently, his testimony becomes very important in the end. And I feel like is the deciding factor in the trial. He's the last person in the trial to talk. Okay. So I don't think that's a spoiler to say that the kid is the last person in the trial to talk. How he gets to that point, though, how did that make you feel? Because I'll tell you right now, I was fucking pissed.
I mean, part of the other like, one of the many things that kind of come to mind whenever I was, like, watching it was just how part of the stress is that we're having to figure out what happened in this event or try to piece together, like, what we think happened in this event.
Yeah.
And then the other half is that we're watching this child have to watch this all take place.
Yes, yes.
And he has to
process
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he has to process it, and he
Yep.
has opinions of it.
Yep.
And it's heartbreaking to, like, watch how much dirt they're trying to dig up on the mother.
Yeah.
And, like, and have to see this child's face be like,
And the
I don't know
father.
what to think about this.
Yeah. It's not just how much dirt they're trying to dig up on his mother, but how much also dirt they have to dig up on his father too. It's both. It's both of his parents have to be dragged through the mud through this, because ultimately, in order to, for the defense's side, they have to say, look, this was either a suicide or an accident, and here's why we think it was a suicide, and again, I don't think that's spoilery, but the son has to process that. And we, in real time, we see, like, there's a lot. It's made clear that this is not a super happy marriage, but it's a marriage that works for them, which I think we all can recognize that that's okay. Like, not every marriage is going to be like the best thing in the world, but also I think there's something to be said that if it works for you as a couple, then good. But ultimately, it doesn't always work, and the son doesn't get to see all of that, and that's all put in front of him, and he has to process that. And the way that he processes it is exactly how you would expect an 11-year-old to process it, but it's also infuriating. I was just like, I cannot believe you're doing this, kid. This is not the way
I figured it out, but also, what the fuck?
Yeah, I see, and I did not figure it out until he said it. I was like, oh, I was just sitting here cursing that kid, and I feel bad. So, yeah.
But that's the beauty of it. That's, to me, the beauty of this movie is that
Yeah.
it does not always go in the directions that you're expecting it to.
Yeah.
And it happens organically, and it happens with characters.
Yeah.
And, like, to have a 2.5-hour movie where the entire time you're not really sure where the chips are going to fall, like, that's great movie making. That's
Absolutely
great filmmaking.
And to have a 2.5-hour movie that is entitled Anatomy of the Fall, and that literally that title has so many layers to it, and there are so many things falling apart during this movie, and but it all has to unravel so that, as the judge says, the truth is uncovered. Really quick before we get to the rankings, I wanted to touch on French courts. So so I have two movies to go off of: Saint Omer and Anatomy of a Fall.
As do I.
I'm fascinated. It's so conversational. It's so just kind of like, well, I'm the witness, but we're going to talk to 5 other people while there's a witness right here, and the lawyers are just constantly just doing these projections of how they think things might have been. And it's stuff that, like, if you've seen, two US courtroom movies. You know an objection is coming immediately, and it's just nobody ever brings up the objection, and the lawyers are entirely allowed to just conjecture all they want, and it's fascinating. What
It
how do you
really is.
Yeah, right? Am I wrong on that or
No, I thought, like, I think that's partially where there was tension for me was,
Mhm.
I mean, I immediately just wanted to be like, burden of proof, burden of proof. Like,
Yeah,
you have to prove this. Like, I'm
yeah,
just like, you can't just say that they murdered, and if you can't prove that they weren't murdered, that therefore she must have done it. I'm like,
yeah.
that is not how this works. And I'm like, well, this system seems to work differently, where you have to prove one or the other. And it's just like,
And how you feel about it absolutely better come up, because if you don't feel something about it, you're definitely going to jail. It's it's like the feelings that it gives you is more important than what you actually did. It feels
because
like.
like it feels like courtroom dramas, like American courtroom dramas, are very calculated. Like,
Yes.
the language, what you say, what you
Yeah.
do, like everything is like politics is calculated, like
Mhm, mhm.
serves a purpose. And the conversational style of
Yes.
these like French movies involving their court system are like just make it to where like it's like you're watching the most exciting live debate.
Yeah.
And wow, I want to find more courtroom dramas set in France.
All
I want
right.
to find
Yeah.
more. There's a subgenre. There has
That's
to
a really
be.
good point. So the lead actress Sandra Hüller, um, you have seen um oh, what's her next movie coming out? The
Zone of interest.
You have seen Zone of Interest, right? Okay.
Yes.
That next time we have you on, hopefully we'll be able to talk about that, because I want to see that one so bad. My assumption is that because she carries this movie, like, and I know Zone of Interest, like, it's
She's kind of supporting.
right. So does Zone of in is this plus Zone of Interest in her back pocket enough to get her Best Actress nominee for the Oscars,
I
or
hope
is it
so.
just
I
what's your
really
feeling? Because
my
Margot Robbie is a shoe in. Like, let's just get it out of there. Margot
I
Robbie is
don't think
100% getting
so.
a
I don't
nominee.
think she is. Let me
Really?
I don't think she is. Let me check Gold Derby really quick, cuz
Okay.
I need to see like who are all the people, like I need to see the major categories so I can be
Right. Who are people betting on is what we're wanting
like
to get to the bottom of.
Emma Stone, Poor Things.
Oh
She's
yeah,
the
that's
front
yeah.
runner to win.
Right.
Um Behind her is Lily Gladstone for Killers of the Flower Moon,
No, yeah, that's true. Yep.
because
Did you get
she
to see that
decided
yet?
to not be supporting. She decided to
Did,
be lead.
well, she should be. Did you get to see that yet?
I didn't get to see it. It's so
Okay.
hard to find time for a 3.5
I
hour
know.
movie.
I know. That's fine.
I
So
might this week.
that's two spots. So
Um,
what?
so
What? Yeah.
so then those are the only two I feel pretty certain are gonna get it. And then there's
Sure.
like 7 or 8 that are possible. So like you'll have Sandra Hüller from Anatomy of a Fall. I think she is gonna get in
Mhm.
because I think it will be a major factor in other categories.
Okay.
Therefore, more people will
She'll
see
be
it.
buoyed up.
That's what I
Yep.
hope.
Mhm.
Neon, I think, is pretty good when it comes to
They
campaigning.
actually they weirdly are. It's very, yeah.
Yeah, so like I feel comfortable that they can push this since they don't really have anything. I mean, I would have to double check, but I don't think they have any other major Oscar player other than Anatomy of a Fall.
Okay, cool.
Um, Margot Robbie for Barbie, Fantasia
Right.
Barrino for The Color Purple, Annette
Okay.
Bening for Naiad, Greta Lee for Past Lives, Kaylee
That's way
Sweeney
too
for
political.
Priscilla.
Yeah. Oh, Priscilla is okay. It'll
I'm
be
seeing that
interesting.
Thursday.
Awesome. Awesome. So, all right, Kristen, here on Real to Real Talk, we do taco ratings, 0 to 5 tacos. If you want to give it a little extra sauce, you give we add guacamole. Why? Because nobody eats a half a fucking taco. So, where do you land on this Anatomy of the Fall?
I would give it 5 tacos
5 tacos.
out
Excellent.
of 5.
Yeah. Um, and that's where I am also. This movie, uh, so I have seen Killers of the Flower Moon, and I gave Killers of the Flower Moon 5 tacos as well. And they're very different movies, but these are just two movies that are just in my mind absolutely 5 taco movies. And Anatomy of the Fall is, I mean, is honestly, it's way more accessible, even though it's way more difficult to watch, like, if that makes sense.
I think
um
so.
yeah, so folks, check your local listings, please. Anatomy of the Fall,
Please,
100% worth it.
worth it.
Support it. I'm sure it's going to be coming available on streamers within the next month or so to rent.
50% is in English.
Uh,
Like French
More.
film,
It's
50% is in
It's
English.
I would say 70% is in English. Really the only parts that are in French are in the courtroom, and only about half of the movie, only half of the last half of the movie is in the courtroom, right? So,
Oh, very true.
and even then she speaks English the whole time.
Yep.
So, yeah,
Most of it's
it's
in English.
check it out. And the reason why it's in English is equally fascinating. And so,
Yes.
um please check it out. Check it out. Is there any chance you watched When Evil Lurks on Shudder? I'm just bringing this on you right now.
No, because I'm a
Okay.
weenie when it comes to
Okay.
horror movies.
That's fine. That's what I'm going to be talking about next. Before I do, Kristen, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you.
Thank you for
It's always
having
a
me, as
pleasure.
always.
I
So
love it.
hopefully,
I love it.
I mean, we got Zone of Interest.
Yes.
Lord knows what's going to come
Priscilla.
out.
When
Priscilla, like,
once I can get it around to seeing Priscilla, yeah, yeah, yeah. I always let you know when something big's coming around that I'm getting to see. So, and I have your list from the Chicago Film Festival also.
awesome. Thank you so
Hooray!
much.
Thanks so much for coming by, Kristen.
Bye.
Bye. Where's your? There you are. Okay, now we've got me talking about When Evil Lurks on streaming on Shudder. Tomorrow's Halloween. This is appropriate. Holy crap, people. Let me tell you. So When Evil Lurks is a horror movie out of Argentina. And uh just really simply, it's a movie, it's a story about a demon that inhabits the body of a migrant worker, essentially, in a small town in Argentina, and the impact that has on the whole town. And the impact is huge and debilitatingly scary. This movie just in some parts just freaked me the fuck out, and is 100% something that everybody needs to watch if you like horror movies at all. I mean, this movie, it comes from a director named Rugna. Damien Rugna. His prior movie to this is something called Terrified, which I haven't seen yet, but after watching this, I am definitely gonna. That's what I'm watching tomorrow during Halloween. And it's on Shudder. I'm not giving anything away other than what I've just said. This movie, it's not so gory where it's like, wow, that's a lot of gore, but it's pretty heavy with what it presents, and some of that is pretty gnarly to see. Um, it's beautifully shot, amazingly acted, and the script is just killer. This has sort of like a Hereditary feel to it. If it, I've read in a couple of different comments from people online that this guy is definitely sort of like is following the tracks of Ari Aster and is really close behind him, and if Ari Aster's not careful, might overtake him. I think that's sort of a knock on Beau is Afraid, but I really like Beau is Afraid. So but it is fucked up. When Evil Lurks, now streaming on Shudder, I'm giving this one 4+ guac, and the guac is just gnarly as fuck. That's all I'll say about that. When Evil Lurks, please catch it on Shudder. The other recent release this weekend was Pain Hustlers on Netflix. This movie is not anything like either of the two that we just talked about. This is starring Emily Blunt and Chris Evans and Catherine O'Hara. It's made by David Yates of the Harry Potter movies fame, and it's basically the story of a fictionalized story of an opioid of the opioid of a drug manufacturer. And oh, by the way, it's got Andy Garcia too. That's really kind of important because he plays the CEO, sort of founder of the company, and is the the evil that lurks in the back. But this is also a black comedy that isn't always necessarily funny. Um, and it just in an environment where the opioid pandemic, or I mean, it's a pandemic. The opioid epidemic is really a problem. I'm not entirely sure that this is the kind of movie that we need about it at this time. Not that we don't need a dark comedy about it, but we need it to be a little smarter, I think, is really what it boils down to. I didn't hate it. I'm also never going to watch it again. So that lands with 2 tacos plus guac. So, hey, look, it's on Netflix. So it's super easy to watch and accessible. I recommend you check it out. But before you do, check out When Evil Lurks. That's all we've got for today's show. Thank you so much for coming on. Once again, thank you so much to Kristen Smith for coming on and talking to me about When Evil Lurks. Hopefully you'll come on next week. I'm not exactly sure what's coming out, but I will have more movies to talk about next week. Hopefully you'll see some too, and listen in. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. Happy Halloween.